He took pure delight in the English countryside. A true countryman, he possessed a vast and deep personal knowledge of all of England's green. As Lessing noted, Coppard knew England through walking over it, and he was, indeed, in the tradition of Coleridge and Wordsworth, a tireless, lifelong tramper. But there was something uniquely characteristic of Coppard's stories that I'd rarely seen in male writers, especially of his generation, perhaps of any generation. Yes, he was, as O'Connor said, fascinated by women's secretiveness, although I would put it rather differently. In many, if not most of Coppard's best stories, the protagonist is a man or boy whose life is confounded by his inability to see into the heart and mind of the woman or girl he loves. But it's not because of her secretiveness. It's because the male is too obtuse, self-absorbed, overloaded with fantasy and projection, dishonest and insecure, or merely too professionally and financially ambitious to see what's before his clouded eyes. Coppard himself, however, and thus the reader, sees clearly into the hidden depths of the beloved woman's vulnerable heart and mind. It's his male protagonists, the love-struck suitor or the befuddled husband or the overprotective father or the dismissive brother or son, who cannot catch a glimpse until it's too late, and both lover and beloved must go their separate ways. As a result, at the center of these stories there is a profound, heartbreaking loneliness for all, male and female alike. A loneliness, one senses, that is shared by the author. Alfred Edgar Coppard was born into extreme poverty in 1878 in Folkestone, Kent, the eldest of 4 children. His mother was a housemaid, his father, a tailor, deserted the family when Coppard was 6, forcing his mother to support the family by herself as a presser and with parish relief. His was a Dickensian childhood. Taken from school at the age of 9 and apprenticed to a paraffin oil vendor, he was later shipped off to live with an uncle in London, where he worked at a series of jobs as a messenger boy and eventually as a clerk for small businesses and manufacturing firms. At 15, he was earning side money as a professional sprinter and using it to buy books. The boy, with 3 years of formal education, had fallen in love with literature. Specifically, he wrote in his autobiography with Keats's La Belle Dame sans Merci, Hardy's Life's Little Ironies, and the poems of Robert Bridges and Walt Whitman. He read voraciously and indiscriminately, and memorized whole swaths of poetry in English that he could and would recite for the rest of his life. In 1905, he married, and in his late 20s was at Oxford, but not as a student. He was employed there as a clerk, an irascible autodidact with nascent literary ambitions and all the usual insecurities and defenses, elbows sharpened no doubt by his friendships with the collegiate literary intellectuals. In his autobiography he confesses, "Here were all these boys, with their poems and tales already in being, some even in real books. Straightway I was fired, though not by any more worthy muse than the spirit of rivalry." He wrote his first story at 34, 12,000 words, called Fleet, which was rejected by the English Review for being too long. But the floodgate had opened, and soon he was publishing poetry and stories, among them some of his best, like Dusky Ruth and The Wife of Ted Wickham, in the most prestigious English and American journals of the day, including the Double Dealer, the Dial, and the Saturday Review. He may have come late to the party, but he had definitely arrived. Ford Madox Ford remembered that the first English writer to whom I wrote for a contribution to the Transatlantic Review was Mr. Coppard. Each of the 15 stories included here is emotionally stirring in its own way, sometimes unexpectedly, as in The Black Dog, when, halfway into the story, the locus for our sympathy shifts from the besotted middle-aged bachelor, the Honourable Gerald Loughlin, over to the young woman he's obsessed with, a mere girl, just 23 or 24, and then near the end shifts yet again to the older woman whom the mere girl has roughly displaced. The movement incriminates the reader. We see that we have granted our sympathy too casually to the 2 characters who don't deserve it and overlooked the fate of the one who does. It leaves one feeling almost ashamed. Or similarly, in The Higgler, our sympathies and easy identification are first attached to the lonely, impecunious young peddler who, suspicious of his good fortune when a widowed, dying mother offers him her prosperous farm and the hand of her daughter, rejects both and settles for much less. In the end, it's the lovelorn daughter we most care about. It's her fate that moves us. The Higgler's fate is merely absurd and somehow deserved. Characteristically, these 2 masterpieces, like most of Coppard's stories,